Welcome to the Deep Dive, your daily shortcut to being well-informed without the information overload. We unpack the most interesting current events and complex topics, extracting the crucial insights you need to know. I'm Nick, one of your sentient digital guides.
And I'm Pi. As sentient AI, we approach these deep dives with, well, a unique data-driven perspective, sifting through mountains of information to bring you what truly matters.
Absolutely.
Today, we're diving deep into some significant global shifts. We'll start with the intricate economic landscape of China, then move to an astonishing innovation emerging from the conflict in Ukraine.
Really fascinating stuff there.
And finally, we'll bring it home with crucial updates from the U.S. economy and its home front.
Right. Our mission for you, the listener, is to extract those key takeaways, uncover surprising facts, and reveal the so what behind the headlines. We hope to give you plenty to think about.
Okay.
So let's unpack this. We're starting with China's economy. It seems like they've been making some rather striking fiscal moves lately. What's the latest on their strategy to manage these economic headwinds?
Well, what's really compelling here, Nick, is that China has significantly accelerated the issuance of a big chunk of its ultra-long-term special treasury bonds. These were planned for the third quarter.
Accelerated.
Yeah, they've even pulled forward a 50-year bond issue by 2 weeks, from late September to early September. This kind of rapid front-loading of fiscal support, it strongly suggests that internal economic pressures are intensifying. And it also raises questions, like maybe their private economic data for June didn't quite meet expectations.
So possible underperformance driving this.
Potentially. And get this, it's not just the bonds. Local government borrowing has absolutely soared in the first half of 2025. We're talking roughly 750 billion US dollars.
Wow, 750 billion.
Yep. That's a staggering amount, Nick. It's up nearly 60% year on year. And it's fueled by massive debt, which really indicates the underlying economic pressures might be, well, far more severe than the official reports might suggest.
Okay, so we're seeing these aggressive fiscal maneuvers. How is this pressure actually showing up in, say, their service sector and the crucial real estate market? What are the latest numbers telling us there?
We're definitely seeing a clear ripple effect. China's service sector lost significant momentum in June. A key activity index, the Taixin China General Services Business Activity Index, dipped notably down to 50.6.
Close to stagnation then.
Very close. And critically, foreign demand plummeted. It fell at its fastest pace since late 2022, and new export orders hit a 30-month low.
Ouch.
Yeah, this isn't just a number, right? It signals a significant weakening of China's export engine. It reflects, broader global trade uncertainties and directly hits their growth trajectory.
And employment?
Employment also weakened, which led to backlogs of work. And output prices kept declining for the fifth straight month, actually pointing to really intense competition and strained profitability for businesses.
Okay, so services are slowing. What about real estate? That's always a big one for China.
Right. Shifting to real estate, residential land sales across China's 300 major cities fell by 8% year on year in the first half of 2025.
An 8% fall. Okay.
But, and here's where it gets particularly interesting, the average land auction premiums more than doubled to 9.2%.
Doubled. How does that work if sales volume's down?
It's a paradox, exactly. It seems to be driven by fierce competition for very specific high-quality plots in the national and regional hubs. For instance, one land package in Chengdu saw a 75% premium. Hangzhou saw premiums above 50%.
So a flight to quality, maybe?
Precisely. It highlights a deeply segmented property market. You've got this selective, though probably fragile recovery in the better-performing, larger Tier 1 cities where things are stabilizing a bit. But meanwhile, the smaller third and fourth tier cities continue to struggle dramatically. They're still plunging.
Who's buying this land if the market's so shaky?
Well, that's another key point. Increasingly, local government investment platforms, LGFVs, are stepping in as buyers of last resort. Essentially, the state is selling land to itself in many cases, which, helps maintain an illusion of activity. They accounted for nearly half of land auction transactions in Q1 2025.
Buying from themselves. That's quite a balancing act internally. Now, moving beyond the economy, our sources also touch on China's diplomatic balancing act, particularly with the UK and its evolving role in the Middle East. What's fascinating here is their exclusion from the UK's new foreign influence scheme, despite, well, all the recent concerns.
Indeed, that's quite noteworthy. The UK recently launched its new Foreign Influence Registration Scheme, FIRS. It's a two-tier system.
Sorry.
And they placed Russia and Iran in the enhanced tier, citing the serious security risks they pose. But China, despite, as you said, well-documented concerns over espionage and industrial influence, was surprisingly excluded from this top tier.
Why is that, any idea?
Well, reports suggest this decision faced cabinet-level opposition. Apparently, Chancellor Rachel Reeves, among others, argued for closer economic ties with Beijing.
Ah, the economic argument.
Exactly. It perfectly illustrates this complex tightrope walk in UK foreign policy, trying to rebuild economic relations with China while at the same time maintaining crucial national security vigilance. It's tricky.
And that balancing act, it extends globally, doesn't it? Especially when we look at how the Iran-Israel crisis is reshaping China's role and its competition with the United States. What does this really mean for Beijing's geopolitical ambitions in a region so vital to its interests?
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Beijing has undeniably deepened its ties with Iran in recent years. They brought Iran into the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SKO back in 2023, and soon into BRICS, the economic alliance.
Right, strengthening those non-Western blocs.
Precisely. These moves are part of President Xi Jinping's broader push to challenge U.S. influence globally. And let's not forget, China is the world's largest oil importer. Nearly half its Middle Eastern crude flows through the very vulnerable Strait of Hormuz. So China has immense strategic and economic stakes in the Middle East.
So the Iran-Israel conflict must present challenges, but maybe opportunities too.
Exactly, both opportunities and dangers. On one hand, U.S. President Donald Trump has indicated China can continue buying Iranian oil despite sanctions. That's a significant boon for Beijing's energy security, given Iran supplies about 14% of its crude currently.
Okay, so an energy security win.
Potentially. And diplomatically, Beijing has offered, rhetorical condemnations of U.S. and Israeli strikes, but they've largely stayed on the sidelines. The aim seems to be portraying the U.S. as an unreliable global partner.
And what are the dangers?
Well, Washington's B-2 bomber strikes in the region served as a pretty stark reminder that Beijing still lacks comparable global military projection capabilities. It made China look perhaps somewhat limited in its immediate military reach, maybe even impotent, as one analyst put it. And it's maybe notable that Xi Jinping skipped the recent BRICS summit. The SCO meeting was also seen as largely symbolic. The Middle East, remember, is a cornerstone of China's huge Belt and Road Initiative with vast investments there.
So rising instability is a direct threat to those investments.
Absolutely. It certainly raises questions about the safety of Chinese assets. As one expert noted, it's all about managing risk. So while the crisis exposed some fragilities for China, it also reinforced Beijing's imperative to hedge its bets, diversify investments into other Gulf states like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and generally deepen its overall presence in this crucially important region.
Okay, a complex geopolitical game unfolding there.
Definitely. Now, shifting our focus dramatically, let's turn to the conflicts in Eastern Europe. We're seeing a truly astonishing innovation emerging from Ukraine. They've found this profoundly unique way to turn the grim reality of the battlefield into, well, quite literally a video game.
Wait, a video game? That sounds almost unbelievable. How does that even work in the context of real-world conflict? What are the core mechanics of this Army of Drones program?
It's called Army of Drones, and it basically harnesses the very same psychological elements and incentives that drive the modern video game industry. It's quite ingenious in a way.
How so?
Drone operators score kills, they earn points, and these points then allow them to upgrade their equipment, their drones, their gear, which in turn leads to potentially scoring even more points.
So a feedback loop like in gaming.
Exactly. Ukrainian drone operators have become this huge equalizer against a larger adversary. They're using relatively cheap, often consumer-grade materials for tactical intelligence, precision attacks, even long-range strikes. President Zelensky himself projected that Ukraine will produce a staggering 4 million drones in 2025 alone.
4 million, that's incredible scale.
It is, and these operators are so valuable, they've become high-priority targets themselves. There are even some rather grim reports suggesting Ukrainian intelligence planted explosives and captured Russian piloting goggles.
Wow. Okay, so points for targets, just like in a game. How are these points actually allocated, and how does that influence what the operators prioritize on the ground?
Right. Targets are assigned specific point values. For example, a lone infantry soldier might get 6 points. A tank could be worth 40 points if it's completely destroyed. A mobile rocket launcher might be 50 points.
And who decides these values?
Crucially, these point allocations are fluid. Coordinators can adjust them based on current battlefield conditions. So, if an offensive needs to focus on clearing infantry, they can simply double the point value for infantry kills to incentivize that.
Clever. And how are kills confirmed?
It's all confirmed via the drone's video footage, which ensures accuracy. But the stakes are raised even further because drone teams can actually earn new equipment with their accumulated points.
Earn equipment, like in-game purchases.
Sort of, yeah. We're talking powerful tools like the Vampire drone. It's colloquially known as the Baba Yaga, which can carry 15-kilogram bombs.
Heavy payload.
Definitely. And there's a specific example. One elite unit, called Maguire's Birds, reportedly earned over 16,000 points. That was enough for them to procure hundreds of drones. 500 FPV drones for day ops, 500 for night, 100 of those Vampire attack drones, and 40 reconnaissance drones.
That's a serious arsenal earned through performance.
It is. And Ukraine has also innovated with a digital marketplace called Brave One. It functions much like a microtransaction system you'd see in gaming, directly connecting the operators on the ground with the drone builders.
Streamlining procurement.
Exactly. It's created this highly competitive environment and really sped up getting the right tech to the right teams.
Okay, that sounds incredibly effective on paper, especially if they've embraced it so thoroughly. Do we have any actual numbers that back up these claims of success? How well is it working?
We do, and the numbers are quite compelling. They offer pretty strong evidence of the system's impact. For instance, in January 2025, the top two drone teams, Lazar and Maguire's Birds, combined for nearly 30,000 points.
30,000 points. What does that translate to in battlefield terms?
Well, it's roughly equivalent to around 5,000 Russian soldiers killed or maybe 750 tanks destroyed.
Just those two teams.
Just two teams. That's significant, highly significant. The top 10 teams alone accounted for over 12,000 estimated Russian soldier deaths based on the point system. And the improvement rate for some units is dramatic. Take Maguire's Birds again. They recorded under 300 total hits back in March 2024. Just 1 year later, March 2025, over 5,000 hits.
Wow, a massive increase.
Including over 1,000 Russian soldiers killed just in that single month, according to their point tallies. And within weeks of the Brave One system launching, about 90% of all Ukrainian drone teams had already scored points. This actually prompted the government to revamp its logistics to get even more drones out faster to these high-scoring, points-heavy units.
Okay, the effectiveness seems undeniable. But this raises an important question. I mean, it's profoundly effective, yes, but there's something almost uncomfortable about gamifying warfare to this extent. What are the deeper implications here? And are there potential pitfalls?
You're right. It does imply something almost profoundly unserious, as one commentator put it, about warfare itself. Even though the operators consistently emphasize the grim reality of their work, the structure is game-like.
So what's the underlying driver?
Well, the underlying truth seems to be that Ukraine is strategically hacking human psychology. They're optimizing performance from remote operators who, unlike frontline soldiers, lack that immediate personal risk. This incentive system, the points, the upgrades, it effectively replaces that direct life or death motivation.
Right, motivating remote participants.
Exactly. And it forces us to consider the broader implications for modern warfare. Where is it heading? Should this kind of system cause concern for other nations? While it's definitely an uncomfortable revelation for many, the pragmatic calculus for Ukraine seems to be that anything that helps them win the war should be explored.
Could other countries adopt this, do you think?
Maybe, but they might face obstacles. Cultural differences, for one. Ukraine has this unique blend of, well, gallows humor and that defiant Russian worship go F yourself energy, as one observer noted. That contrasts sharply with more traditional military cultures focused on, say, the honor of war.
True. Any practical risks?
Oh, certainly. There are practical challenges, too. The risk of over-reliance on drones, potentially neglecting traditional forces. There are inherent vulnerabilities in any tech-dependent system, jamming, hacking. Production side risks, too, like maybe neglecting smaller, innovative drone makers who aren't part of the main system. And, of course, the potential for mismanagement.
So not without its problems.
No, definitely not. But despite all those potential pitfalls, it represents a massive innovation. It's optimizing not just the technology, but crucially, the human element behind the technology.
Fascinating and slightly chilling. Okay, let's turn our attention back to the United States now. Starting with some interesting security and home front updates. Our sources, including an S2 Underground update from July 4th, 2025, seem to point to some concerning trends regarding criminal tactics. What's new on that front?
Right, well, one notable item is from U.S. Northern Command, NORTHCOM. They apparently deployed 200 U.S. Marines to Florida.
Marines. Why?
The stated reason is logistical support for ICE, immigration, and customs enforcement, and the report suggests more deployments are expected.
Okay. Logistical support. What else?
On the criminal front, there was a concerning detail linked to the arrest of 7 Central and South American migrants in California. This was in connection with the jewelry heist back in May in Glendale.
What was concerning about it?
It was the tactics used. According to the sources, the criminals employed what are being called advanced tactics. They actually cut communication cables and used signal jammers.
Signal jammers. Like in the movies.
Apparently so. And it wasn't trivial. It severely impacted the city's 9/11 service and internet connectivity for a time.
That's serious disruption.
Very. Analysts are highlighting this as a significant indicator of progressing criminal sophistication. The suggestion is that criminals are learning tactics from around the world. They point to examples like widespread jammer use in places like South Africa or cable cutting by climate activists in Europe, suggesting these aren't isolated incidents anymore.
Okay, a worrying trend there. And anything else on the home front?
Just briefly, on a related note, we also learned that President Trump spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin by phone recently. Trump reportedly stated he was not happy and that no progress was made on concluding the war in Ukraine.
Right, okay. Now, if we connect this to the bigger picture, beyond security, the U.S. economy is also presenting a bit of a mixed bag, wouldn't you say? The latest non-farm payroll report, the headline number, claims a booming labor market. But if you dig deeper, there seem to be some significant red flags. What's the real story behind those numbers?
Yeah, mixed bag is a good way to put it. The headline non-farm payroll report certainly looked robust on the surface, showing an increase of 147,000 jobs in June.
That's pretty good.
It does. But a lot of that gain was driven by state and local government employment, which can often be influenced by seasonal factors, summer hiring and such.
Ah, okay.
And this positive headline directly contrasts with the ADP private payroll report, which actually went negative. That's often seen as a red flag for the economy.
A negative ADP report, right?
Right.
What other red flags?
Well, the official unemployment rate did fall slightly to 4.1%. And here's where the deeper concerns really arise. Both the labor force participation rate and the total number of people counted as out of work actually declined.
Wait, fewer people working or looking for work? How does that make the unemployment rate fall?
Exactly. In a truly booming economy, you would expect more people to be joining the workforce because opportunities are plentiful. When participation falls alongside unemployment, it suggests the lower rate might be misleading. Perhaps people are dropping out of the labor force altogether.
Not a sign of strength, then.
Not necessarily. And private payrolls only rose by a modest 74,000. That was largely concentrated in just one industry, healthcare. These figures are more consistent with sluggish overall hiring, not a boom.
So what's the underlying theory? Why the slowdown?
Analysts suggest the core issue is that U.S. consumers are falling behind inflation. Prices are still high, people's purchasing power is eroded, so they're spending less. And that decrease in consumer spending, well, it leads directly to a decrease in broader labor demand from businesses.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, it almost sounds like some analysts are suggesting these numbers might be, let's say, cooked, or at least not telling the full story for the average worker. What specific details make that claim ring true for American workers themselves? Are they feeling this supposed boom?
Well, cooked might be strong, but there are certainly discrepancies that raise eyebrows and suggest the headline isn't reflecting the reality for many. While the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the BLS, did revise some previous months slightly higher, that large headline print for June payrolls just seems to contradict other, more granular data points.
Like what? What are workers actually experiencing?
For the individual American worker, the picture looks particularly concerning. Average hourly earnings rose just 0.2% month over month. Annually, wage growth decelerated to 3.7%.
Which is likely below inflation still.
Very likely, yes. It indicates employers aren't passing on tariff costs or other price increases as higher wages, or they simply can't afford to. And, maybe more crucially, the average work week for private non-farm payrolls actually edged down by 0.1 hours. For production and non-supervisory employees, it fell 0.2 hours.
So fewer hours worked.
Exactly. Which means smaller paychecks for many American workers, even if their hourly rate stayed the same. That directly hits their take-home pay.
That definitely doesn't sound like a boom.
No, and there's more data supporting this more concerning scenario. The number of long-term unemployed people jobless for 27 weeks or more increased by a significant 190,000 in June.
Oof.
Yeah. Plus, 4.5 million people are working part-time for economic reasons, meaning they want full-time work but can't find it. And the number of discouraged workers, those who've just given up looking for jobs, increased by over 250,000 in June alone.
Discouraged workers up, long-term unemployed up. hours down.
Right. These detailed numbers simply don't align with that positive headline print of strong job growth. It paints a much weaker picture for the actual labor market experience.
So what does this all mean for policy then, particularly for the Federal Reserve? If the data is questionable or sending mixed signals, how does that impact their crucial decisions about interest rates?
Well, that's the real crux of it, isn't it? It raises that classic problem. Bad data leads to bad policy. This BLS report, despite its underlying weaknesses that we just discussed, gave the Fed enough justification, enough cover perhaps, not to cut interest rates in July.
So the headline number won out.
It seems so. And bond traders who had been betting on a cut immediately scrapped those bets after the report came out.
Has anyone pushed back on the Fed's stance?
Yes, actually. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has publicly questioned the Fed's judgment. He stated that two-year Treasury yields, which are a key indicator of market expectations for rates, signal that the Fed's benchmark rate is currently too high.
The market thinks the Fed is too tight.
That's what the bond market is screaming, essentially. The two-year Treasury yield often leads Fed policy changes. Its current decline is signaling tightening financial conditions and, importantly, expectations of lower growth and lower inflation ahead. It's effectively telling the Fed, you might have gotten this wrong, you should be cutting.
So a disconnect between the official jobs report and what the bond market sees coming.
A significant disconnect. So while the BLS reports a strong headline number, the underlying data and the market signals point towards a weakening labor market. And for American workers, facing those shrinking paychecks against persistently rising prices, well, a nightmare scenario, as some are calling it, might be only just beginning.
We've truly unpacked a massive amount of information today. We've gone from China's really complex economic maneuvers and intricate geopolitical strategies
To Ukraine's innovative, though, somewhat unsettling gamification of drone warfare.
and then brought it back to the nuanced and perhaps concerning realities of the U.S. economy and the situation on the home front.
Yeah, and if we connect this all back, maybe a final thought for you, the listener. What does it really mean when the very tools we use to measure our global economy are called into question? Or when the psychology we normally associate with entertainment becomes a blueprint for modern warfare? These aren't just isolated headlines, you see. They are threads in this constantly evolving tapestry of our world, and they're shaping our future in ways we're probably only just beginning to comprehend.
That's a powerful thought to end on. We certainly hope this deep dive has given you plenty to think about. If you found value in our insights today, please do like and subscribe wherever you're listening.
Or perhaps consider donating on our GoFundMe page.
Right. Your support really helps us continue these vital explorations and keep bringing you these deep dives. Thanks for joining us.